Hi, and welcome to another episode of the I'm a Fucking Man podcast. Serge here, and thank you very much for joining me today with my conversation with Daniel Sills. This is part of a series of episodes talking mental health with men, and I am so happy for the conversation that I did have with Daniel. He shares his experience of mental health uh, as early as in his teens and something that was very traumatic that happened to him. And he shares that story and he shares his experience of mental health as a student and as a young man, which is so important, which is something that I can relate to not knowing and not experiencing. So I know you will get a lot out of this because the insight that he shares is for all ages. So thank you very much. And without further ado, let's get started with Daniel.
Hi, I'm Serge. I'm a husband, a father, a technical sales rep, and I'm also the founder and project developer of the IAFM League, a personal development league for men. And one of my missions is to give men the chance to have fun and challenge themselves while building consistency and growth in their lives. And this is my podcast. Here I'll speak with everyday men, just like you and me, to discuss their struggles, their successes, their passions, and desires to becoming the best version of themselves. So thanks for joining and welcome to the IAFM podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the I'm a Fucking Man podcast. Serge here, and I'm very excited for today's chat with Daniel Sills. Daniel is, this is the first time we are meeting virtually. We have been talking through social media. Daniel is running in the Chicago Marathon as part of the Team NoStigmas, which I am also a member of, and that's how we've gotten in contact. This is part of a series, as I've mentioned before, of men talking about mental health, their journey with it, their experience with it, because there's not enough of it happening. So it's to raise awareness for that. So, Daniel, thank you for joining me. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Well,
I've been up since 4,
oh my
working on
God.
some stuff for my grad school, and I've had a lot of coffee, and I'm
Okay.
feeling good. So
Perfect. Excellent. Good start. I like the energy. But
yeah,
and I mentioned this when I shared post about you that going through your content on social media, I love the energy that you bring. So that's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to our conversation today. And as you mentioned, you're a student. So what is it
yeah,
that you can share with everybody? What it is you're studying, working on?
yeah. So I am working on my Master's of Science in Electrical Engineering. And I'm doing that through a research center. So I work for the Louisville Automation, Robotics, and Research Institute, and
Jeez.
so I'll be putting out a master's thesis as part of my graduation and stuff like that, describing all of the research that I've done with my time at the institute.
Well, we need to talk about that at a different point because that's
Yeah,
very fascinating, and I know nothing about that, so I'm curious already.
yeah.
So you have how many years left then? Is this
So
your
I'm in my last semester. Yeah.
okay?
So
Okay,
everything's kind of coming down to the wire.
wow.
The pressure is on. So I mean that's actually a big part of my platform through and with No Stigmas is like I think a lot of people have this idea in their head, and probably accurate, that when you're in college you have the most free time in the world, you have the most flexibility and whatever else, but at the same time, like, it's the first time in your life that, like, everyone else's hands are hands off, and all of that freedom comes with, like, a lot of anxiety and a lot of
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of things across the board. Like, my to-do list is longer than ever, and
Mhm.
my list of people that are telling me what to do and when to do it is shorter than ever. And so I think there's a huge amount of pressure especially on the graduate student side. So I have expectations to publish materials. I have expectations to balance my class load with 20 hours of research every week.
Oh wow.
And I'm actually at a point right now where the funding that I have for my research is actually separate from the research that I am doing on my master's thesis.
Okay.
So my thesis is separate from my lab research, which is separate from my classwork. So, um, so I think if you like
Jeez.
do the math, like hypothetically, I should be spending like 50 hours a week on all of my school requirements. I'm not doing that, but
Okay. At least you're
um,
honest. Okay.
yeah,
It's that's wild. I mean, that's it's been roughly 20 years since I was in college, but I do remember um there were so many. I never did a master's, but my undergraduate uh there's so many requirements you have to have. You need to take this type of course to fill the degree. And I remember, I don't know if it was in my second or third year, um just feeling like I don't want to take this class, but I have to.
yeah,
Um, and it became like a very much a time management. That was probably one of the biggest skills I took away from school was
yeah,
time management, planning, preparation. Okay, this I got to do at this time because this is due at this, next week. This is due in 3 weeks. So this we can wait on. This we have to focus on. I have to put this much time into this. And it's learning to juggle all that. And you're right.
yeah,
We don't, as you're growing up as a child and going through high school, adolescence, it's funny. I've got two boys. I've got a 7-year-old and a
mhm,
10-year-old, and they want to have certain responsibilities, but then also don't want the responsibilities that my wife and I want them to
yeah,
want them to have. Um, and we know that sometimes they'll just offer like, hey dad, can we help you with this? And sometimes it's I'm grateful for it, and sometimes I'm like, well, that will
yeah,
actually slow me down. But uh, at least we can maybe for a little bit, and
yeah,
then they might get bored of it anyways, and then want to stop. But I know eventually at a certain point they might be like, no dad, I don't want to mow the lawn, or I don't
yeah,
want to do this. But you're right where, and then this is you're the first to bring that up that I've ever
mhm,
heard this. um, that you get to a certain point where your responsibilities build, but then you have less people telling you to be responsible for those things. It's just like, oh
yeah,
wait, I'm an adult now. So I have to do this on my own now. I have to do this.
yeah,
And for most people, I think it's a gradual process, but it can be quite quickly if you're going off to school and it's like,
yeah,
oh, I have to feed myself. I have to, uh, whether it's laundry, whether it's, and then all this schoolwork, all this
yeah,
pressure that you're also investing in. It's a lot of money that you're putting
yeah,
into this. So I'm glad you're bringing this up because it's something that I never thought about when I was a student.
yeah,
And this is something that I've shared on social media where 20 years ago, I never heard anything about mental health. I never
yeah,
heard people weren't talking about it, or if they were, it was very specific and niches.
yeah,
Um, and I would say probably it's been maybe 10 years or so that I've noticed more of an awareness, and I think social media has helped that. It's just that there are all these platforms that are available now,
yeah,
um, but it wasn't something that existed when 20-ish years ago or
yeah,
more. And it's something I think that a lot of people don't realize the stresses and anxieties that students have,
yeah,
because as an adult who, my wife and I, okay, we have a home, so we have responsibilities financially for paying bills and feeding our children and
yeah,
this insurances and making sure this is taken care of, which we didn't have 20 years ago.
yeah,
um, so we think like, oh gosh, life can be overwhelming or stressful,
Yeah.
um, but we also don't have the same responsibilities you do right now.
Yeah.
The same, because it is a mental load that's being
Yeah.
put on you. Yes, you've decided to go through this path, but the things that like for you to do, it's not, you didn't necessarily go, okay, I'm
Yeah,
going to take all this
exactly.
on. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you're bringing that up. I'm glad you're sharing that. So when did you start, being aware of that?
So I think a lot of it came with I'll say extended freedom that I kind of gained moving into my graduate program.
Yeah.
Um, Graduate classes just tend to be like so much more, I'll say, free form
Yeah.
of like, we're going to give you an assignment and then we're not going to talk about it for a month. And you
Okay.
better have that assignment done. And I mean, when I talk about like fewer people holding my hand, like I'm not suggesting that I want more people holding my hand. I
Mhm.
really like the freedom that I
Yeah.
have, and I think I do a good job of embracing it and like managing my own time. But I just think that a big conversation that gets brought up whenever college students start complaining about these responsibilities or whatever is, oh, you're having the time of your life, like this is the most free you'll ever be and whatever. And it's like, really, I want to break down like I mean, going back to like No Stigmas, the organization we're running for, like I really feel like there's a stigma around college kids expressing their mental health issues and
Yeah.
their mental health problems, because everybody has this idea. And I mean, a lot of people lived through it, so some of it is like retrospective. I remember whenever I was in college, but like, it's just so invalidating whenever people look at me and go like, oh, but like
No.
tuition, it's like, like I'm far from having zero responsibilities. But
Yeah, I
so
think
I
that
mean,
you
that's the
you you bring up a good point, and I was going to ask you about that because it is easy for people to say, um, "Oh, you know," because the reason why they're telling you this is because they're comparing it to their experience.
yeah.
And yes, their experience might have been they partied when they were in college and they had a blast and they had fun,
Yeah.
and I can relate to that. I had fun. I had fun with my friends. I partied, but I also took school like I took it.
Yeah.
I was responsible with it. I wasn't like, okay, this is a free for all. But I think people, because I'm guessing these are older adults who are telling you this.
Yeah.
It's not. Um, so it's either based on their experience. Some of it might be even jealousy of, I wish I had that again.
Yeah.
Because they're remembering the good times and going, oh,
Yeah.
I remember the freedom I had. Yes, okay, maybe you didn't have kids, and maybe you didn't
Yeah.
have to pay a mortgage, and maybe you didn't have this and that and this and that. Um,
Yeah.
but that's the choice that that person made.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're bringing this up because the person those who are telling you this, that's their life journey.
Hmm.
And so to be like, oh, you shouldn't complain about the responsibilities you have, or it's just what it is. That's what it is being a college
Yeah.
student. Yes and no. I didn't. I know people who have their masters and or studied to be, became teachers, so they did an extra year of. I was
Yeah.
considering being a teacher, and then I
Yeah.
stopped. I went to school for theater, so I did my undergraduate in theater, and so for a lot of people, that's like fun and games, right?
Yeah.
But and though I enjoyed what I studied,
Yeah.
it was work. And the reason why I didn't go into teachers college is because I didn't want to go to school anymore. I was done. I was done with school. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
done. I don't know if I will enjoy this, even though if it was
Yeah.
just one more term or one more year. Um, so it's, you know, and especially what you're studying and working through, there's a lot, like you said, it's like 50 hours of
Yeah.
material, of content that you to be
Yeah.
working on a week. That is more than most people's like how many hours they spend working in a week.
Yeah.
So it's easy for somebody to say, "Oh, well, you got it easy. You're staying with your buddies, or you're going out
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday night, or a pub night, or whatever, doing this and that." It's like maybe, but maybe not. Or I
Yeah.
am, but I also because I want to enjoy this experience as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's it's a valid point you're making because
Yeah.
it is true, and I like that you say it's based like what they had lived because that's
Yeah.
I think any comments that are made are from anybody, whether it's work related, whether it's starting a family, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's well, that's your life, and this is my journey.
Yeah.
So something I want to talk about because you bring up a very good point of this is something that not just you're experiencing, but friends or fellow students
Yeah.
are sharing as well. Because this is not something that I ever talked about when I was in school. I never heard about
Yeah.
this, so I'm glad you're talking about this. So, can you go into that a little bit more about this awareness now?
Yeah. I think something that's been great coming out of COVID. This is just an interesting like
Hmm.
correlation a little bit. Is just like the flexibility that a lot of people have.
Hmm.
I think my lab used to be way more strict about like you need to be in the lab working on things, and now like we have more potential for working from home, being digital for meetings, things along those lines, which I think is a huge step for people who I'll say experience like heavy battles with their mental health and things
Yeah.
along those lines. I have a friend who is probably only able to complete their masters because they essentially had severe insomnia and executive dysfunction. And so, like, from the hours of 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. were the only times that they were able, not because of their schedule, but like just because of that executive dysfunction,
Oh my
heavy
goodness.
ADHD, things along those lines. That was the only times that they could bring themselves to work on their master's thesis. And so, like, having that flexibility to be able to do that from home, do it at odd hours, things along those lines, really enabled them to get it done when I don't think if they had been in a more strict
Yeah.
or regulated environment, it would have been possible. And I think in general, that's the beauty of just college in general is how much flexibility you have. But I think allowing for things like that is something that's kind of new in this conversation
Yeah.
that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's one of my best examples, and
So
that was a close friend of mine.
So, I mean, you bring up because COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And I
Yeah,
remember when that started, where we live, um, we're, we're not in the city. Like
hmm,
we're more secluded. And so, it wasn't, and, we could go outside, so it wasn't
yeah,
like, oh, I feel stuck. Yes, we had certain, uh, we had curfew. We live in Quebec, so there was for a period of
yeah,
time there was a curfew, like 8 p.m.
okay,
You
yeah,
had to be inside your home, like things that were like this is not a war, but
yeah,
so that was weird. But it wasn't like it didn't change our lives. But I
yeah,
remember thinking, wow, if I was like 19 or 20, 21, and this happened now, and I'm at school, and I can't see either my family or I can't see my friends and
yeah,
I'm stuck in my little dorm room, like, or I can't socialize, or I can, but everybody's at a distance. I could not fathom that experience. Can you, because you
yeah,
lived it. So what
yeah. So
would,
it's so interesting that you bring this up because like I started college in fall of 2019.
Yeah.
So like
Jeez.
this was spring semester of my
Oh
freshman
my
year that
gosh.
like
Yeah.
so like I had just gotten settled, I was making friends, I was like making plans for future semesters. Like so the way my program works is we have required internship semesters. And
Okay.
in order to allow you to graduate on time, you do several summer semesters, or actually you do all of the
Okay.
summer semesters in
Okay.
some way or another.
Yeah.
So like so for the summer semester, you had to move out of like the freshman dorms and like into upper level apartments or dorms
Okay.
or things like that on campus. And so like I was making plans of who I wanted to move in with for the summer. And then everybody was sent home. So they closed down my college campus entirely and sent
Okay.
everybody home for that semester and for the summer semester. So I was doing everything online at that point. Um I was actually I guess 4 months, 5 months maybe into dating my current wife. So obviously
Okay.
that worked out,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
there was a period there where we were long distance, like, and that was like zero, did not see each other long
Yeah.
distance for just as long as we had been dating in person.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, I was super fortunate, like you said, that my parents are in a more rural part of the world.
Okay.
So, and at this point, like I had all of my fitness endeavors and things like that that we can get into,
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
where I like my running mileage went up, my biking mileage went up. Like I was taking those opportunities to get out and be active, and that
Yeah.
was, and like I had so much more flexibility. Than if I was like attending classes and being
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
campus. I mean, I was taking advantage of the student rec center, but that's not being able to go out in the middle of the day and do a 30-mile bike ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think,
um,
and I've talked to a few different people about this, the benefits of physical activity. I can only speak for myself. I find it very therapeutic. I didn't when I was in high school and in my 20s. I I didn't realize how it can help your mental health. I was doing
yeah,
it because I wanted to stay fit. I wanted to look a certain way. Um, I was also 20 years younger, so now the having kids and being an example for them, but also being like, I want to stay healthy for my own sake
yeah,
as I get older. But especially running, we're going to talk about this in a sec. Um, me running training for this marathon. This is my first marathon that I'm running. The
congrats.
last half
So
marathon I
exciting.
ran was 8 years ago, so that was the last time I really ran. So
Hmm.
starting up, and I do. I mean, this as you see, there's like workout stuff. I do
Yeah,
train, but I hadn't run. So when I started running in April, I was like, oh, I am not ready for this.
yeah,
And it took about a month or so that I was like, okay, now I feel comfortable. But that's when, for the first time ever, doing exercise, physical activity, fitness training in over 20 years, this has been the first time where I'm like, this is therapeutic. This
yeah.
is, it's a form of meditation for me anyway.
Hmm.
When I'm out running, it's like I'm, and you brought this up, like it's an escape.
Yeah.
So I'm able to get out of the house and I'm in nature and breathing some fresh air because I have to because I'm breathing heavily. um, so you were already physically active. I'm guessing like
Yeah.
this was not something like, hey, you know what? I don't know what to do. I'll just start running.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so easy for me to just take this all the way back to why I started running. In my senior year of high school, I really felt super boxed in, just social, uh, well, I don't know. I shouldn't say social, parent stressors,
Okay.
predominantly.
Okay.
Like I felt like my options were to work on homework, to work on extracurriculars or to work on college applications or
Oh
like
wow. Okay.
college scholarships. Like I felt like those were the only three things that like, and I say like my parents would never say that they were forcing those were the only things that I was ever allowed to do.
Yeah.
Like it was not like that. It was absolutely like stressors I was putting on myself and just like the social climate that I was in, you know, like in high school I was like with all the AP kids like at the upper end of the class and whatnot. And so like all of them talking about like, oh, have you applied for this and whatnot? Like, you know,
Right.
I was in those conversations. So
Yeah.
like very socially, those were the three things I felt like I could work on. And I just got to a point where I was like, I need something I can shut my brain off for. Like, and my dad had run years ago. I was kind of like loosely familiar with it. And so nobody's going to complain if you go for a 30-minute run. And that's 30 minutes that nobody expects you to be doing anything else.
Yeah.
And so I just started running and I'm very much an all or nothing person. And so I did a run streak. And so I ran every day for like 150 days to like get started.
To
But so
start, so you had not run before, and then you ran 150 days in a row.
yeah, I mean
Marathon?
it was just like mile minimum, but
Still,
or I don't even know if it was that. Like sometimes I think I was doing a half mile or something.
still.
But like and I mean, you know, I think I started at a good time because like puberty was on my side and whatnot. But like I was in marching band, so I was like fairly fit.
Okay.
And at the time I was playing the the contra, which is a marching tuba that you like
Okay.
hold on your shoulder like
Oh,
that.
jeez. Okay.
So like I had some good like endurance and
Yeah.
fitness like coming into it, like I'll say mediocre, decent. And then like just all of the concepts that like you preach through I mean maybe you, but like the world preaches through marathon training of just like, you know, run slow and run easy, like make it easy.
Yeah.
And so like I had enough of those notes and then like at some point once my dad realized I was serious about it, like he started like pitching in
Okay.
and like giving me ideas and like things to do to improve my pace or whatever. And so
Wow.
um but yeah, that's how I got started. And like running for me has always been an escape and a mental health thing of like uh, a responsible way of not being responsible.
Yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, you said something that's, nobody is going to tell you that it's wrong to go out for a 30-minute run. Like, nobody's going to
yeah.
say, you shouldn't do that.
Yes.
Even if you have all these, responsibilities, things to do, whatever, nobody's going to be like, well, okay, they'll be like, okay, go for your run and then get back to your responsibilities.
yeah.
But it's something that I don't think is talked about enough. I mean, I remember doing gym class, and sure, we learned, phys ed. We learned, okay, different sports or different,
Hmm.
okay, this is why, to eat well, nutrition, but nobody
Yeah.
talked about mental health benefits. My kids,
No.
they might be being introduced to it now, but
Yeah.
it's not, I don't think the phys ed teacher is going, okay, children,
Yeah.
so here are the endorphins that are released when you know, no. And even if
yeah.
they did, they'd probably like, okay, can we just play basketball or whatever. But it's so crucial. I think it's so important that
Hmm.
because there's been so much, and we see it everywhere, especially with men, I think, but we all women as well.
Yeah.
Or when it comes to physical activity, it's about the look. It's
Yeah.
about getting the six pack. It's about getting the big arms, being shredded or ripped or cut or
Yeah.
big. And it's not about this can relieve so much stress, anxiety. It can be
Hmm.
therapeutic. And that's, you know, people, yeah, want to have a nice body, but we
Yeah.
also we want to feel good.
Yeah.
Um, so when you started so you just were like, okay, let me just try running. I'll just do this, and then you
Yeah.
started really enjoying it to a point where now you've been doing it for how many years now at this point?
So that would have been 2019.
So it's
So
5 years.
I guess I'm just over 5 years. Yeah.
And it's become something that you're passionate about. I mean, I know you've
Yeah.
run because you've run like almost ultra marathons. Like,
I've run several ultras. Yeah. So I
yeah.
guess most recently I did 100K. So that was about 67 miles. Um,
Blows my
you
mind.
mentioned
Fantastic.
you
So
mentioned this. Sorry, I had this connection that I wanted to bring up real
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
You mentioned how running was meditative for you, and just to touch back with all of the college stressors and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like it's like super meditative for me, and I think about it like as my secret weapon. Like
Mhm.
I'm like I sometimes I feel like I can solve the problems that other people are struggling with, or like I have all of these like time management skills and things like that because I make running such a priority.
Mm,
And it's like that time away is like so critical for me to be able to work through the things that I'm struggling with. Like I am not the type of person to just force myself through a homework
yeah.
assignment. Like I would much rather like when something gets hard, when I'm like really struggling with something, like take a moment, go for a run, come back to it. And on that run, like whether I'm actually thinking about it or not, or whether I'm just returning with a fresh head, like it legitimately feels like a secret weapon to me.
That's awesome. Um, I think you hit on something that it's that disconnect, and for you, running has been that.
Yeah.
Whether it's I don't think about anything or I do think about stuff, but I'm not stressing out about it because my body is going through a
Yeah.
physical stress that is overcoming the mental
Yeah.
stress. Um, and I think it's I don't know at what point that's going to be start becoming more implemented in workplaces and things like that. But you're right because we get to a point where we can't function
Yeah.
anymore, and it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help whether it's our classmates, our community, our team, our the workplace. If you are burning yourself out,
Hmm.
so I'm glad you bring that up because it's and that you are realizing this um, at the point of your life that you're in now, as opposed because you said it's a tool, and that tool you will use till the end of your days.
Yeah.
So anytime you have these moments of, ooh, I don't feel right now, or I need a break, or I need to disconnect, or you
Hmm.
have that, I'll just go outside and go for a run. And unfortunately, a lot of people either aren't aware of that, don't believe in it, or just don't know the benefits of it and find
Yeah.
other tools that, whether it's alcohol, drugs, uh,
Yeah.
you know, uh, pornography, um, the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
So it's I applaud you for not just being like, okay, I'm doing this because I'm physically active, but knowing like this is I this helps me, and it also helps other people, as you mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, so that's fantastic, and I'm so happy you know it's key, and it's so simple. Running, going for a run,
Yeah.
you need a pair of shoes, and you know that's all you need to do. And even if it is going for a walk, even if somebody is not able
Yes.
or feels
I wanted to
comfortable
bring that up. Yeah.
to go running, you don't have to go running. You can just
Yeah.
get outside, even if you live in the city.
Just get
Get out.
outside and get your body moving. That's
Yeah,
the critical part. Yep.
yeah. So do you you've shared about your experience. Has your experience inspired other people, or have other people know, like whether it's your friends or classmates or family, have noticed like, wow, you're doing this, it's working for you, how about I try it? Has that happened, or
Um, I think there's a world where it's happened more than I realize.
okay.
I've had like a limited number of people like reach out to me and legitimately say that like I've inspired them to train for their first like
Wow.
5K, half marathon, etc. And that's been super impactful to me. There was and so like that's actually been several people like all the way back to like my high school friends that
Yeah.
have reached out and like seen everything that I've gone through and whatnot. And then even like a couple people that I only like barely knew through marching band or something along
Okay.
those
Yeah.
lines
Yeah.
in college, have like reached out and said that they've started training and things along those lines. So I can't really speak to, if they're doing it necessarily for the mental health benefits
Yeah.
that we've talked about, or just because I've paved the way and proved that like a band kid can run or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but it's what I like about that is, you know, it's your journey, and you're having a
Mhm.
positive impact on other people without being like, this is my intent. Like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to be an influencer and I'm going to get
Yeah.
people run. Um, but I think that's amazing that people have reached out to you, be like, hey, just so you know, I've started doing
Yeah.
this, and it's because you're doing it, and I've seen what it's done for you, and you
Mhm.
sharing it, whether it's through social media or talking to them, or um, I think it's very powerful. So good on you. I commend you for that,
Yeah.
and you'll have more people uh, thanking you, or reaching out to be like, wow, thanks to you, because I think people. What prevents, and you're aware of this already, but what prevents people from doing things is fear.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's a subconscious fear. It's an insecurity that we might not think about on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But it's like, ooh, Daniel's doing that. I don't think I can, right?
Yeah, and that's so I wanted to kind of mention I've had a couple people say I'm training for my first 5K, or like at this point like I am people's running friend.
Yeah.
Whether it's necessarily somebody that I've inspired or just somebody who wants to get into running, I've had a couple people reach out to me. And like the biggest thing, and I loved what you said of like it's fear that keeps people from doing
Hmm.
things. And I think one of those fears is these arbitrary or completely false barriers to entry. There is no barrier to entry to running. Like if you have a pair of shoes, you can run.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and so it that's like the number one thing that I try and share with people whenever they do ask me about all of these things. If they're like, "Hey, I want to train for a 5K, like what do you recommend?" And I'm just like, just be consistent. Like, if you go run a mile every single day for a month, I guarantee that if you don't just blow your pace or whatever, then at the end of that month, you can do a 5K.
Yeah.
Like, and so what? You've never done the distance before. Like, just, you
Yeah.
know how to run. You've done
Yeah.
a mile for a month in a row.
Yeah.
Like, like
Yeah.
just, I constantly am telling people simplicity and consistency. Like, and I think you can do anything with that. Um,
1,000%. I think we live in a world, um, and it keeps getting accelerated, but we live in a world where we want things immediately.
yes.
Amazon is going to come within 30 minutes. It's not good enough 3 days from now. It's not good enough
Yeah.
tomorrow. It's like, I got to have this now. It's a
Yeah.
microwave world. It's like, okay, I'm watching the microwave. Okay, I got to wait 2 minutes for this to heat up. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Um, and so we're used to now this instant gratification, this
Mhm.
instant, I got to have this. And we're getting away from just the patience, the consistency. It will come faster than we think. I mean, exactly like you said,
Exactly.
if you tell somebody that has never run before and wants to, they might think like 5 kilometers. I cannot do that. You can't do that now. Okay.
Yeah.
You could, maybe if it was an emergency, you know, um, but just through that consistency and patience, you will get
Hmm.
better. You'll suck at first, just like you're like you said, you musician playing an instrument. The first time you play that instrument, you were not good at it.
No.
No, any sport you play, any instrument, a dance you learn, a new craft, you're probably going to suck at the beginning, and that
Hmm.
is everybody. I don't care if you are, if somebody's who's just athletic and can pick something up, they're still going to not be as good as the person who's put in the time,
Yeah.
and build that consistency and growth. So I think that's an important point that you make, where it's just be patient, take your time, um, because I think for you, I'm guessing it's something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So I
But
think that's
it's something I've learned to enjoy doing, I
mhm,
think. Like, and it's that building up process, At this point, I have learned how to have an easy run, but I understand that, like, a lot of people's, like, what is easy for them is going for a walk. And so go
right.
for the walk, and then once the walk doesn't feel like it's doing anything for you, go for the run.
Yeah,
Or, walk most days, run one day,
yeah,
like whatever that is. So, and it's like when it's easy and it flows, like that's when it's fun for me. But because I've been in the space long enough, it's also really fun for me to go have really stinking hard workouts. But that's something that I've built up to and I've
yeah,
learned to love
yeah.
because I see the impacts that it has on my fitness and on my ability mentally to handle hard things.
Yes, that's a great point. I think that's we we get caught up what's going on in here.
Yeah.
We can have that voice that says you can't do that, you won't be able to do that, you're not ready, or we compare ourselves to. I heard the a line the other day. Um, comparison is the thief of joy,
Yeah, I love
right?
that one.
So I was reminded of that. I'm like, yeah, like we unfortunately social media has a lot of benefits, but comparing ourselves to others is something that a lot of people I think struggle with when they see social media, because they go, why does
Yeah,
that person have it figured out? Or I want that person's life, or what they're doing, or what they've attained.
yeah,
But we don't see the whole story. We don't see, and that's their journey,
yeah,
so it's it's an important thing to remember, to just do your own thing, like you said, be consistent with it,
yeah,
and you will want to probably challenge yourself at certain points, like you mentioned, because it does help you go, okay, if I was able to do this,
yeah.
I can do this. You know, um, so when it comes to your experience with mental health, and have you ever experienced, whether it's severe anxiety or stresses, that you didn't know what to do with it, or if you did, you had the tools to help you through those moments?
Um, I made a post about this during the No Stigmas 10
Mhm.
days leading up to uh,
Suicide prevention day.
yeah,
Yeah.
Suicide Prevention Day. And like, beyond running, which has always been a tool for my mental health, I think like the true like backbone of my mental health has been like the support that I receive from the communities that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I think like being a part of a community, that's why I love the No Stigmas team. Like I love going and liking everybody's posts, like seeing
Mhm.
everybody's training. I love seeing your training that you're posting. Um, and that's why I love Strava and like there's lots of ways that I'm involved in like running communities, but there's also lots of ways that I'm involved in my research lab community,
Right.
and we support each other a lot through reviewing each other's papers, through giving helpful advice on tasks that we're struggling with, things along those lines. And so like I really like nail down all of my mental health, like the backbone of my mental health to like the communities that I've been involved with. And so just to kind of quickly tell a couple of the stories that I included in that post that I was
Mhm.
talking about.
Mhm.
Um, in my junior year of high school, uh, we we had a school shooting, and the shooter was actually in the band program, and I knew them, and I would have considered myself a friend of theirs.
Yeah.
Um, and like as hard as it was to like witness the actions of that individual, I think harder for me personally was witnessing everybody just like who didn't know him or only adjacently knew him or
Mhm.
whatever, just describing him as a monster and whatnot. And I'm not saying that I condone his actions at all,
Right.
but
No.
like they were describing the person that committed those actions, not the person that I knew.
Right. Who's your
And it
friend?
was,
I mean,
yes, my
yeah.
friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I can't say what exactly happened to turn him from one to the other, but it was extremely, extremely alienating, like within my hometown and in my like home community to be on this opposite side of the coin
Right.
of people that didn't want to call him a monster, knew him previously, knew how kind and gentle and whatnot he could be. And so in that moment, it was actually a church group that I was involved with that kind of gave me the space to like open up and tell this other side of the story. And they were super, super welcoming to my perspective in that moment.
Mhm.
I think a little bit because they were seeing the whole event from a third person perspective.
Right.
And so like, I'm not, this is not shade towards anyone that is on the other side of the coin that
Mhm.
was friends with the victims, because that's a whole other
Of
perspective, and
course.
that's not my perspective.
Yeah.
And I think it's why I care so much about like validating everyone's perspective. I've talked about it with my experience as a college student, and like here I'm obviously describing it in a different light.
Mhm.
And I think that's just like why the broad concept of no stigmas is so important to me,
Yeah.
because by breaking down all of these stigmas, I think we let more voices be heard.
Mhm.
Because I think so many voices just get muffled
Yeah.
or completely muted because there is a stigma surrounding somebody's situation or the way somebody's viewing something or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's you, and again, to you didn't know what they were experiencing or thinking or going through that action,
Yeah.
and you're also, I'm guessing you experienced confusion because you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
this is somebody I care about who's
Yeah.
doing something that's hurting people. I don't know why they're doing this. Um, and like, did you I don't know if you felt this, but did you feel guilt for being friends with this person? Like, was it like,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. But like I was saying, like that's the guilt and the emotions that I was feeling, like in a sense, like I lost a friend. It just
yeah,
wasn't the same friend that other people
yeah,
legitimately lost, or not
right, yeah,
legitimately, that's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
wrong term, but like you know yes, I didn't lose the life of a friend, but he is no longer in my life
yeah,
because of what he did.
yeah,
um and and so yeah, there was guilt for feeling some kind of empathy for a school shooter. And I think that's a confusing emotion that I'm still
mm-hmm,
dealing with.
mm-hmm,
Uh, I mean, and there was a lot of confusion of just like, I think what everybody wants to know is why. Um,
yeah,
but um, but yeah, I mean, it was like I was very grateful to have a community outside of like
mm-hmm,
my hometown that was able to give me the space to process a lot of this,
yeah, of
because of the stigmas surrounding
course,
a lot of the stigmas that were present in the hometown conversation.
yeah. No, and I think it takes courage for what you did, because you could have not said anything. You could have said, "Oh yes, he is a bad person," but you took a stand because you knew maybe something wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I was having a talk uh, yesterday with somebody for another recording, another episode,
Yeah.
and a lot of we were talking about forgiveness and how some acts are unforgivable.
Hmm.
They are.
Yeah.
But if we're able to forgive the person, not the action, but forgive the
Yeah.
person in that moment, it can be very liberating, whether it's yourself or it's somebody else. Um, because we don't know, something led to that,
Yeah.
whether it was some form of trigger, trauma, um, an emotion, thoughts, something built to that moment.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what to do in that moment. That they didn't know how to, they took an action,
Yeah.
and in that moment they thought this is the right action, or maybe they knew this is not the right action,
Yeah.
but and I will live with the consequences, whatever they may be. But so we were talking about that idea of forgiveness. When we can do that to somebody, not to say to their face, "I forgive you," necessarily,
Yeah.
but we can make a when we do that with ourselves, it can be very liberating to go, I can't forgive the action, but I can
Yeah.
forgive that person in that moment because they probably weren't equipped. We've talked about this with the
Yeah.
tools that, or the resources that they knew were or were not available to them
Yeah.
to prevent that from happening. So um, I think and the fact that you found a community. I love that you've been talking about that during this call, because I think it is important for people to know, going through mental health struggles, challenges. We've posted this on No Stigmas, but you are not alone.
Yeah.
There are other people who, whatever you are thinking, as dark as you may think it may be, somebody
Yeah.
else out there has either thought about it or is currently thinking about it.
Yeah.
And communities can help profoundly. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to find a community that was open
Yeah.
to listening and to supporting you um, through that journey in part of your life. Because
Yeah.
again, junior high, so you're how old? 15 ish?
I think I was 16. Yeah.
16, yeah. So you're 16
Yeah.
years old. Nobody prepares you for that.
No.
No, nobody.
Yeah.
Even um, even somebody who you think is okay, a parent or a grandparent or a teacher or whoever it may be, they're not ready for that. And so then it's
Yeah.
all these people who experience something traumatic, scary, who don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So their past experiences, triggers, traumas will
Yeah.
propel them into a different direction of how do I express this. So I commend you for being aware of that, speaking out, finding an avenue that was able to heal you, in a way through that
Yeah.
experience. Because I'm guessing there were a lot of other people in your surrounding, whether it was friends or other students, who
Yeah.
didn't do that, or didn't know how to do that, didn't know how
Yeah.
to do that. So, and I think, us talking today, and you've already been doing it already, you provide an avenue for people to go to you if ever they relate to, what you've
Yeah.
experienced. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation, is so
Yeah.
that people go, oh, there are other people like Serge or people like Daniel who
Yeah.
talking about this, or they know resources or outlets that can help them. So, how did you um, how did you come across No Stigmas then? How did you learn about that?
It actually kind of goes. Uh, we've all been working with and working. um, and kind of taking guidance from Patrick Messenger,
Yeah.
who you've had on before. I'm actually personal friends with Patrick, and I know you have history with Patrick. But
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
live in the same city. He was leading the run club for that. He was leading the run club for the running store that he
Yeah.
worked at. We ended up bonding over barefoot shoes. I'm a
Okay.
barefoot shoe guy. Won't get into all that today.
Yeah.
I think I've
Okay.
already yapped enough on another podcast about that.
Okay.
But we bonded over barefoot shoes, and then eventually he actually was the one that got me into ultra running. I crewed for him at his 100 miler, and then he ran with NoStigmas last year, and
Yeah.
that's how he got involved with everything. I'm sure if you want to hear more details on that, go to the other episode.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so he said, "Hey, we've got more bibs coming out. We're looking for more people to sign up." And it had already been something that was like loosely on my radar, but I think my biggest hesitation was just like, I'm a college student. Most of my peers are college students. Like, how am I going to raise this money?
Right.
And I think one of the biggest surprises to me is just the amount of I mean, I've had lots of my college friends donate, and so that's been
Hmm.
amazing to see that like this is a this is a priority that they are putting in early in their lives. You know,
Hmm.
contributing towards awesome organizations like this. But then the other thing is like seeing how many of my parents' friends and like my grandparents' friends and people from my church back home and things along those lines that like, at this point I've been in college for coming up on 6 years, but like they still have a high opinion of me and want to help me out and see the
Hmm.
value in this. And I hope that there's even a level of I am educating them on mental health and the resources available and why it's so important. And I hope that they're able to relate to that because I know a lot of them come from a generation like where you've talked about, like, even 20 years ago, this wasn't a conversation that was happening. People weren't talking about mental health. And
Yeah.
so, I know a lot of them, especially my grandparents' friends and my grandparents, frankly, like, they definitely weren't having those conversations. And so like I'm super happy to be able to share resources and share my story and just start these conversations and create spaces for them.
Yeah. No, that's you are educating them. Um, the whether it's grandparents generation or your generation, um, you and that's something that I've realized through running. At first I didn't think, oh, I'll be sharing as much as I have been.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, I'll share and see if people want to donate or at least learn more about No Stigmas. But you are, and that's what's been fun for me doing, through this process.
yeah,
One of them is getting to meet and get to know people from this team. We
yeah,
all have different backgrounds and different stories. Um, but the more of us that run this marathon or promote No
yeah,
Stigmas, promote mental health advocacy, um, it at least gives other people an avenue to look into. Um,
yeah,
and you, when you talk about whether your parents or grandparents, uh, they might not go, okay, well, I'm gonna contact No Stigmas because to them they
yeah.
might go, well, I've lived my life, I've dealt with
I've
stresses and
made it this
anxieties,
far.
and
Yeah,
but they might go, well, they might refer somebody else to it.
yeah,
And I think what's cool about, and I posted this when I shared a little bit about you. The fact that you're doing this is creating awareness within your age group, your college, your schoolmates,
Yeah.
which is fantastic, which is something that I didn't have, which is something that prior to, my generation and older, let's say, didn't exist. And that's one of the reasons I've become more passionate about running and raising awareness for no stigmas. Is I go, I can't control the stresses and anxieties that my kids have. They're 7 and 10 and they have stresses and anxieties. They
Yeah.
do. And my wife and I encourage them to express how they feel, whether it is
Hmm.
frustration or anger or fear or sadness. We have to teach them how to navigate through it. Um, but I want them to have resources or to know of resources that if they are, in their teens, or because they will have more
Yeah.
stresses and anxieties, that they can go, hey, I have this place that I can reach out to. I don't want to talk to my parents about this. I don't want to
Yeah.
talk to my teachers about this. I want to talk to these people about this. Or
Yeah.
so I think that's because, as you know, you're not the only one experiencing these stresses, especially just in your program, right? This is just one
Yeah.
program at one school, at one class,
Yeah.
which is worldwide. Um, so I think the more you do what you're doing, it will open many ears and open many eyes for a lot of people that go, oh, okay, that's available. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you get into, so I mean, talk about that then. Patrick says, hey, you want to run this? You've already run all these distances. So for you, it's for me, it's like, I've never run this distance. You've already run the distance. So it's not so much of like, yes, it will be, it's still a marathon. So it's not,
Yeah.
so it's not like a walk in the park, but
Yeah.
how has your, because you touched on this a little bit, but being involved with No Stigmas, want, because you've been sharing more about kind of your story and you know
Yeah.
so what inspired that? I'll put that out there.
What inspired the sharing?
Yeah, just be
Or
sharing, being comfortable to share your story, your journey, and
yeah, I think it's something that I've struggled with a lot actually through this process. You mentioned that like, the running and the marathon is like the big thing for you, but like I think getting to a point where I feel like I can open up and feel like I have a voice that's worth sharing
mm,
has been like tricky for me. Because I think a lot of it is like um I feel like so many people have you know, I think it's easier to share your story when you're on the other side of it. Um,
okay,
but I but maybe that's my bias feeling like I'm still in the middle of my story.
right,
Um,
you
and
always will be.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's the reality that I've come to
Yeah.
realize is like, I have had hurdles and I have and maybe it's not that maybe we're using the wrong term in saying our story, but
Hmm.
really it's our stories
Hmm.
plural.
Yeah.
And so like I have stories to tell, but the grand story will never be finished until I'm dead.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so like it's been a lot of work for me personally getting to a point where I feel like I have stuff to share um just because I'm young, like
Hmm. Hmm.
and so like I think there's a lot of me that like I don't want to come across as juvenile or like all of the I'm putting unnecessary pressures on myself. um
Yeah.
and so like that's been the big work that I've been putting in is you know a putting the stories together, figuring out like what I've been through, because I think a lot of it, I don't want to sound cocky saying this or anything, but like I think a lot of it has come naturally, like leaning into my communities, like I've talked about, and things along those lines. And like, I hope that by me sharing what I have done, like, it inspires other people to take advantage of the resources that, like, comes easy to me, because
Right.
I know I'm doing that on the flip side of things. Meditation does not come easy to me, but every single time I've tried it, it's been great.
Right.
You know? And so those have been stories that I like hearing. And obviously what works for people is what comes easy to them.
Yeah.
I can tell the stories of what comes easy to me, and what has worked for me, and then I can learn from that same thing that other people are sharing. I think it's been, um I don't know if I answered the question, but there's
Well, I don't remember what the question was, but that was a fantastic answer.
Thanks.
So, um, no, I think, you touch on, because you're young and feeling like maybe uncomfortable, to like, okay, am I worthy? You mentioned that. Am I worthy
Yeah,
to advocate for this or share for this because I am young and I haven't lived the life of other people? Um, yes, and that will be a reality for, as you move through life. There will be certain people who relate to you and there will be certain people who don't. You
yeah,
can't relate to everybody. No, we can't relate to everybody. But I think what you're doing is the fact that you've moved past that fear, that discomfort, and just be like, well, I'm going to share it anyways. um, you mentioned this earlier. People are, whether it's donating because they believe in what you're doing, they're reaching out to you because of your physical, your fitness journey, because of what you're doing. So it's, I think as long as you just, as you mentioned, sit back into what you're comfortable doing, that you enjoy doing, it becomes easier, obviously,
yeah.
and people are attracted to that. The people who want to be attracted to it will be. The
Mhm.
people who don't won't.
Yeah.
And you'll never hear from those people. And there might be some people in your life that you go, oh, I wish they would just if only they did this. If only they started doing this or implementing this, oh, it would help them.
Yeah.
And either they're not ready or they don't want it or they don't feel, like you mentioned, worthy enough to do it.
Mhm.
But that's unfortunately not up to you.
Yeah.
That's up to them. So as long as I think you just keep doing what you're doing, you talk about being juvenile. I don't get that at all. I mean, we've been talking just even on, seeing your profile and things you've been posting. You have this positive energy. Yes, it's I'll say young energy, but it's not
Yeah.
childish. It's childlike. Wait, and
I'm
it's
trying
not,
to keep my childlike whimsy.
well,
I
it's
love
not,
hearing
that's not
that.
a dig. It's not like a,
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Something that I'm extremely grateful for. I remember when my kids were born, my wife wanted, she's like, I wish they would just stay this small and I can hold them and I was like, yeah, it's beautiful. It's a wonderful moment, and it is a
Mhm.
wonderful period of life. But selfishly, I looked forward to, I can't wait for them to get older so I can play with
Yeah.
them. So
Yeah.
that, and now they're at an age where they'll be like, hey, dad, let's go play basketball. Can you come play basketball? Can you come do this? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's, okay, I'm tired. I don't want to, but I go do it. And when I do it, I'm like, I'm just playing. I haven't
Yeah.
played in years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now I'm allowed to play. This is encouraged.
Yeah.
So that
No,
is,
I love that you brought up, like, just the concept of play. Something that I've been really enjoying, seeing little bits of content about. I haven't done a ton of reading on it, but I know um, a common, like, prompt in therapy or in journaling or things along those lines is to think about, like, if you had to babysit your younger self, like, what would
mm,
you do with them? And then,
wow.
like, of course, the task or, like, the action item is to go do that thing.
Right.
And, um, and I think that's another part of like why, especially trail running for me. You've mentioned the ultra marathons.
Yeah.
All of the ultra marathons are on trail, and so like especially trail running for me is like so like self healing to my like childhood whimsy and like
Mm,
just running through the woods. That's all it is. We're just
yeah.
running through the woods. Who
Yeah.
doesn't want to run through the woods?
Yeah.
Frolic in the meadows, run through the woods.
Yeah.
like,
Well, and
um,
I think, um, and this is maybe just a stereotype, or when it comes to men, you know, and, you've seen the stats when it comes to
mhm,
suicide, and because we get to a certain point where we're kids, we're teenagers, and in general, teenage boys are considered immature compared to teenage women.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden, this is an older mentality, but it's like, poof, I get married, I have a family, and now it's all responsibility. And
mhm,
so there we go from playing,
yeah,
enjoying life, being happy, to,
yeah,
oh, I have to be stoic, I have to be stern, I have to set the rules, I have to be the provider.
yeah,
And that is a mental load all on
yeah,
itself. And I can play a little bit, um, but the playing is maybe a guy's night once in a
yeah,
while, and that's an escape, which is great.
yeah,
But it's not like, and we've talked about this a little bit earlier at the beginning, but like this desire to be happy on a continuous basis.
yeah,
There has been this pressure that has been put on men, whether it's men that have done it, probably on itself. I don't think it comes from women. I think it
yeah,
honestly comes from men, especially from one generation to the next, going, this is what a real man does. This is what a real man is about.
yeah,
And again, that's their experience. But it's like, that's cool, but I also want to be happy. I want to
yeah,
enjoy my life. I agree with, you know, providing with the household, into the household, but now a lot of it's partners that are doing that.
yeah,
At least starting, if you're starting a family, um, and so there's a new. I think there's starting to become a new mindset, or a way of an approach to life, as opposed
yeah,
going into adulthood, going, uh, I still want to play. I can be
yeah,
responsible. I can have that
yeah,
balance, but I still want and so um, that's what I've enjoyed so much about getting to know you, is, for me anyways, I've seen this young man who is responsible. What you're studying is not simple. It might, in the broads,
yeah,
it's not just, so you're committed to this, but you're
mhm,
also committed to doing things that you enjoy, to enjoying your life.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's important for everybody to see, but also for younger men, younger than you, and
yeah,
older than you.
yeah,
So and neither you or I know the journey that will develop for you or for I,
yeah,
as the years go on. But I think if you keep that uh, that mindset or that way of life, it will lead you into amazing things. So keep doing it.
Thank you.
But
No, I love the point that you were making about play and just the little banter we've had back and forth, about it. I mentioned before we started recording that I'm actually taking some time away from social media.
yes, yes.
So
Let's talk about that.
it's been a super brief hiatus. But you mentioned play and like what I've done, as so social media for me just got to a point where it was, I was picking it up too often, and it was taking away from the other things that I needed to be doing,
Yeah.
and just completely frying my brain.
Hmm.
Just I couldn't focus. My focus levels were like demolished. Um, and it purely just came from the fact that like I would wake up and I would start my day by scrolling for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, whatever. And then that would just like continue. And so like anytime anything got hard throughout my day, then the
Mm,
solution was always to pick up the phone. I'll just take a little break. I'll pick up the phone.
yeah.
And so made the decision to it's probably just going to be a 3 or 4 day hiatus.
Mhm.
But I've already noticed improvements. Like I think I'm 2 or 3 days in at this point. And I've noticed huge improvements. And to get back to the point of play, what I'm doing to take a break now, much more consciously, or if I have moments that I would have typically been just filling between
Right.
activities or in the car or whatever, with social media, I'm playing games on my phone. I'm playing video games. I'm
Okay.
back to play, and so it's been super fun. Like,
I I saw. It's funny that you bring this up. Um, you know, growing up as a kid, and I was never a big gamer.
yeah,
I played video games. My brother, my middle brother, uh, he really like loved video games and still
hmm,
does. Um, so with our kids, it's like, okay, you can play, but we want to know what you're playing, and we want to know because now
yeah,
everything, it's not just a console. It can be on a phone,
yes,
on a tablet. So we want to be aware of what you're playing and the time that you're also doing it. But I read
yeah.
somewhere recently that they mentioned that playing video games can actually help with mental health. And
Oh,
I thought I didn't read into it enough, and I don't know where this
yeah,
study was made, or I think it's also in moderation, obviously.
hmm, yeah,
But just like you just talked about, it can be that disconnect where you do have fun, as long as just like anything, as long as it doesn't become an addiction, where it's like
yeah,
things are hard, I got to go to this now.
yeah,
Um, but there's just that little escape, and whatever video game you're playing, you're challenge you're not just scrolling through and not really reading, you're just looking at pictures. There
yeah,
is something going on in your brain, there
yeah,
is something happening.
exactly.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, and I saw this post like maybe 2 days ago, and I was like, that's the
Yeah,
first time I hear a positive thing about video games.
yeah,
That it obviously in moderation, but can
yeah.
help with mental health. So I'm curious as to how that will develop, if there will be more studies, because it was something like
I hope so.
it was with like 100,000 people or something. It
Oh,
wasn't
cool.
just like a
Yeah,
thousand people. It was like thousands and thousands of people that they did
yeah.
a study. So so uh, first of all, I want to thank you for everything that you've shared. This is I'm excited to meet you in person.
Me too.
Got a month. This is wild.
Yeah,
Um,
I know. We're so close.
so I'm excited to meet you, and a number of other people as well on the team. So other than Patrick, do you know anybody else that's running or?
So I was super fortunate to have the opportunity to go up to Chicago for a little meetup. So I think I met 2 or 3 other people. I met Jake for sure, and then there was a run club that we hopped in on at a local Fleet Feet in Chicago.
Cool.
And so there were a couple other No Stigmas people there. But yeah, other than Patrick, I don't like personally
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
anyone else. So
Yeah.
excited to get to see everyone and get to meet everyone.
Yeah. It's gonna be. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be wild, and it's gonna be. Yeah. I ran the Toronto, because I used to live in Toronto, so I ran Toronto half marathon 15 years ago, um,
Gotcha.
and it was along Lake Ontario. So
Cool.
I know there's going to be 50,000 people there.
Yeah.
So I don't know how big the Toronto one was, but probably tens of thousands of people. But it's going to
Yeah.
be. quite the experience. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be, I think I'll be, you know, I'm finishing the long runs now, like
Yeah.
before tapering off. And I honestly feel like today I'm like, I could run a marathon. I
Cool.
don't know how it will go,
Yeah.
but I feel comfortable
You
enough.
will yeah, you will doubt that as you start to taper, but
Yeah.
know that it's just your body recovering
Yeah.
and it's very normal.
Yeah.
Um, so how many weeks in are you? If you don't know that
12,
number, that's okay. 12
12.
weeks? Okay.
So I have like a long run, my last long run, and the past couple
Mhm.
weeks have been kind of weird that I haven't got as all my long run, the longer ones. There was a month of
Gotcha.
like, so this weekend, it's 3 hours, 15 minutes. And
Okay.
that'll be my longest. And then
Cool.
it'll start to taper off.
Yeah.
Um, so, but no, I feel good. I'm excited. And I look forward to just, you know, being in that environment and obviously
Yeah.
meeting all the other NoStigmas people.
Yeah.
So where I'm going to put this in the comments.
Yeah.
So where can people find you, whether it is on social media or because I know you're on Instagram.
Yep.
Do you
Yeah.
have another
So,
platform or?
Instagram, I am, at Daniel T. Sills. Just keep it easy.
Yeah.
So, first name, middle initial, last name. So Daniel T. Sills. And then, if you want to look me up on Strava, Daniel Sills. And then I guess the last thing that I'll plug is my
Yes.
wife and I have been doing TikTok.
Okay.
So we're working towards the goal of becoming digital nomads. So
Amazing.
next June we want to move into a camper and get on the road. So we're kind of documenting that journey of what savings and budgeting and things like that look like, as well as all the planning steps and planning phases that we're going through. And so we're
Cool.
doing a lot of that on our TikTok, Becoming Bison.
That's what it's called. I'm
That's
not
what it's
on
called,
TikTok,
Becoming
so
Bison.
I don't
Okay,
know that
no,
well,
you're
but
good. Yeah,
becoming
so yeah,
bison.
it's
Okay.
called Becoming Bison. Yep.
Okay. Cool. Daniel, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Yeah, this has been a pleasure.
You had, I'm so grateful for your time and the information that you shared. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, one of the big takeaways from me that you expressed was what has worked for you is community
Hmm.
through your mental health journey, whether it is virtually and, or it is with people. I think um, I can speak for myself that I have not been involved in a community in person when it
Yep.
comes, a lot of my communities I'm involved in is social media. Um, but I know the importance of being involved in a community in person because
Yeah.
it's not the same as just talking to somebody, writing a message. So I commend you for that. And uh, what you're doing is fantastic. Keep it up. Don't the worries that you've had about my age or whatever.
Yeah.
You've moved past that fear already. Keep moving past that. I think for
Thank you.
me, any insecurity or thought of, oh, should I share this, is somebody might need to hear this. Somebody might need this right now.
I love that.
And the fact that you're doing it in a way that talking with you today, I knew it was genuine, but talking to you today, I was like, okay, this is 100% genuine. And that's awesome. It's not fake. So keep being you, keep doing that, and
Thank
keep
you.
sharing your stories. That's awesome. So thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Everybody else out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it immensely. So again, this is one of the episodes and a number of episodes when it comes to mental health, speaking with men like Daniel, sharing their journey, their experience, which we need to hear more of. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Well, there you go. What a great conversation with Daniel. I was so impressed with him. I was genuinely inspired by what he had to say. His demeanor, his positivity, sharing vulnerable moments in his life, sharing dark moments in his life, but also being a light for other people. It's so important. One of the things that stood out, as I mentioned in the chat, is community, and how that for him was an important outlet. Other than running, community is something that he has gone back to. So him expressing that is awesome for anybody out there who might be struggling, experiencing mental health as well. I hope that this helps in that way. So thank you so much for joining us today. Again, as always, I send you positive health, wealth, love, and happiness because you deserve it. Until next time, we'll see you soon.